So, welcome back to a new season of Woman to Woman, the podcast where I sit down with different women from different industries to get to know a little bit about who they are, what they do, and their journey to womanhood. We've been gone for a while. I know, I'm cognizant of that, but we're back with a new face, a new feel, the same jingle, but obviously the same amazing guests. And today I am joined by a new member of the team, my little general, the amazing Chelsea Mtada.
You said Jenna. I said, I ain't a Kardashian, honey.
This is the thing. Okay, our dynamics is already showing, and I think even in the way that we're dressed, Princess and the Beast. Okay, but yeah, no, I'm joined with a new member. There's been a shift in the way that Woman to Woman is run, and I think over the years we've had ups and downs in terms of what the businesses looked like, in terms of what their vision has been like. And Chelsea is a new member of the team, so she will be heading up the sex and relationship section of the brand. So before we get into the question in itself, can you introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, because you do an immeasurable amount of things, and let
failing at all of them.
No, come on, don't be silly.
So yes, my name is Chelsea Mtada, and what do I do?
What do you do?
I'm a writer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a creative writer. I'm also a journalistic writer, if that makes any sense. I'm a poet. I'm a university student studying creative writing, and I create content for my own Instagram around sex and relationships. I'm also an arts and culture editor for a magazine called GUAP. I have a background in fashion. Yeah, I am just struggling my way up in these 20s. It's going very well.
It must be going well because you're doing so much. So before we get into like the questioning and whatever not, the first question that I usually ask all of my guests is, what does womanhood mean to you?
Oh my goodness. What does womanhood mean to me? I think I'm still trying to figure that out.
Which is fine.
I think womanhood is something that is individual to each person, and it's a journey. So I'm still trying to figure it out. I will say that my experience of womanhood so far is 3 words, maybe I would say, is sacrifice, strength, and sex.
The 3 S's.
The 3 S's, honey.
So let's kind of like decipher each one. So what do you mean by sacrifice?
Okay. So I think as a woman, we have to sacrifice ourselves in many ways. Even, as young as 9 years old is when women begin to, or some women begin to have periods. And, as girls, we basically are shedding a part of ourselves on a monthly basis. And there's a lot of pain in that process. There's a lot of difficulty in that process for many women. And a lot of issues related to that process. So I think that is what I would mean when I say sacrifice. Not only not only like biologically, but also emotionally. I think women are still trying to understand ourselves and our place in this world. And I think that comes with a lot of sacrifice in that journey, whether it's because you've chosen motherhood or you've chosen, a full-time career, or just a life that doesn't revolve around procreating. Sacrificing relationships, in maybe letting go of your own experience of a daughter to now become somebody's mother. Sacrifice is definitely a big theme in my opinion. The sacrifice of your quote unquote youth and looks that is often attached to the idea of femininity and the experience of women as they get older. So many ideas around sacrifice. Strength, because in order to survive all the sacrificial nonsense, you're going to need to have a little strength. And a woman without strength in this world is a very, very dangerous thing for her. It can lead us into all sorts of vulnerable situations and places and situations where we end up basically disrupting ourselves completely. And so I think there is a level of strength that all women have to have in order to simply survive. And then I kind of leads on into sex, because sex is the number one thing that connects us as humans, but is particular in terms of the female experience of sex. When women have sex, we may get pregnant. That is a result of sex with women. Another result is to do with how sex is used to control women, whether it's because our bodies are sexualized to a point of discomfort, to a point of abuse, whether it's to do with the fact that there is a fear around sex when it comes to women, the fact that some people may view it as a unfair advantage or power that we have. And so those are all the ideas that I have experienced, understood of myself so far as a woman, as womanhood. And I'm sure there is more. And I look forward to it. I wouldn't change it. I like being a woman.
It's dope. It's an extreme sport, but it's dope. So then when talking about your own journey to womanhood and navigating the 3 S's, how has that been like for you? And I think it's even more interesting because you family wise, your mum and your little sister, so you come from like a very women-led home. So how has that shaped what womanhood looks like to you?
So the thing is with my mum wasn't my first experience of womanhood. My earliest, of course, she gave birth to me, blah blah. But my earliest memory of seeing a woman in the house was my grandmother. So I grew up in Zimbabwe between the ages of 2 and 7. And I remember my grandmother she's very serious, she's not messing around, traditional African grandmother. And she presented herself to me at a young age. I saw her as a very, very strong person. Not only physically, but she appeared to me as a woman who had a lot of control of her household. And she was my first experience of receiving love and care from a woman. And then, of course, when I then moved back to London, I then was able to experience that with my mother. My mother, it was interesting because for a long time, I was unsure of her position as a mother in my life because of those younger years of being without her. She visited as much as she could, etc. And she was, as present as she could be. But in my child brain, I didn't necessarily connect with her in that sort of maternal way. So I always kind of saw her for what she was presenting or what she was.
It wasn't the experience of her like that.
I didn't see her as like, oh, this is my mother. It was more like, this is Juliet, titled my mother, sort of, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
And so I often found myself comparing and contrasting what my idea of motherhood is and what kind of mother I want / need versus who she actually is. And I think there is I think this is something that happens to a lot of children as they grow up, is they realize that their parents are human beings, and they may realize it quite late in the game. Some people don't realize it until, they become a mother themselves or a parent themselves, like, oh shit, my dad was a human, and they mess up and they make mistakes and they say the wrong things, and they're actually trying to balance work, life, their own sexuality, their own happiness, and now being somebody's everything can be quite, very difficult. But I understood that my mother was an individual at a very young age, so I respected her for the work that she was putting in to provide. I do, of course, have a respect for how the decision making that she has made in order to do the best job that she can, not only for herself but for her children. And I think because even though it has been a great pain to not, quote unquote, have that traditional maternal bond with her, she is my woman and I am hers, which I think is something that I will always cherish. And I think it's what keeps our relationship very much alive and very strong, no matter what craziness is going on. I see her for who she is, and hopefully as I develop further into my womanity,
is that word?
Womanity.
We'll make it work.
So as I develop more into my own, she can also see me for the woman I am as well. And then in terms of my little sister, there's a 10-year difference. So I always wanted a sister. I prayed for a sister. I knew my mum was pregnant before she told me, and I knew it was a girl. I used to have recurring dreams of my little sister when my mum was pregnant. And what she looks like now is exactly how I dreamt her to be. There were even points where my mother and I would have the same dreams on the same night of my sister while she was pregnant. So we are a family of women. There are a lot of women in our family, and even though we're not all as connected or as close as I would have hoped, what my mother and I and my sister are trying to create is a family unit that is constantly trying to dismantle generational trauma and to actually learn from each other as women and how we experience women in different ways, or how we experience femininity and what it is to be a woman in different ways. Because the way that I do it is completely different to my mother, and then of course completely different to my sister as a young Gen Z. She's only 13. So we're constantly wanting to learn from each other and understand each other and be empathetic towards each other. But
has it been hard, easy? I think this generation specifically, we are trying to understand our parents and give them grace. I think we're realizing we're growing older. So for you, what has that been like, and what's like a tangible advice that you can give with navigating those relationships and the nuances around like finding your own womanity? And
it's a new word.
It's a new word,
like a bell.
Exactly.
Humanity. Bing.
Exactly. And sort of finding your own and understanding your parents for who they are. And I think what you touched on about just they are human. And I think us doing adulthood the way that we're doing it, I think we're realizing more and more that they deserved more grace whilst we were growing up. So for you, what was that like? And what's that one advice that you can give someone who is trying to understand that relationship?
I think it's actually about focusing on yourself. I think what a lot of people do, whether you're the mother in the situation or the daughter / the child, you should, if your parent does something to upset you, you're going to be upset. It's okay to go through the emotions, but then once you have found yourself at a place of being still, think to yourself and ask yourself this: what can I control in this situation? How can I choose to react to this situation? And I think for me, I've always explored those types of questions in myself in the hardest moments of my mother and I's relationship. And what I had to understand was that I had to kind of not necessarily rationalize, but to understand that where the decisions are coming from, and kind of putting myself out of the situation as the hurt child, but almost give myself like a third person persona. And if I was the mediator, what would I say to both people, and what would I want the other people, what would I want the two parties to understand from each other? And, you know, especially when, you know, your parents have grown up from, especially with African parents, they've had a completely different experience to you when it comes to mental health, when it comes to understanding trauma, all these ideas. And so for me, what I usually do is I say to myself, okay, she's made this decision to react this way. Why? I start thinking about the way that she grew up. It's not an excuse, but I think about, okay, the way that she grew up, or how does she understand empathy based on her experiences so far? Or is there a pattern that this is the type of reaction that happens when she's feeling a type of way about this? Or have I even triggered her? Have I done, you know, it's like parents can be triggered too.
Yeah.
Parents will be triggered by you, your child.
Yeah.
And it's like, that is, even though, yes, they're an adult, they're older than you, we are all still children. We are all still suffering under under the childhood, under our childhood memories. And I think that if you have the capability to try and understand another human in that way, no matter whether they're your family member or not, I think it's the first step of actual growth.
Yeah.
Because once that they can see or feel that you are coming from a place of actual real compassion, even if you are the hurt person, if they can feel like you're coming from that place, it then lets them open up to then be the compassionate person, or the strong person that you then need in that moment. It's very bloody hard, but I think for me it's because I have chosen to have a relationship with my mother. I also need to accept that there are certain things that are going to come with that, meaning that I am helping my mother, I hope I am, dismantle her generational trauma so that we don't then pass it on to my children.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's a very, very wise way of looking at that, and very selfless.
Is
way.
it?
Yeah, it is. It's very selfless.
Maybe that's why I'm so tired.
You're breaking general crosses, whilst working, whilst finding your Jesus.
Whilst university, trying to find a husband. I'm joking.
Girl.
I'm not trying to find a husband.
Yes, she is, but it's part of the process of just growing and being an adult.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like I asked about your mum because I feel like she's such a big part of your life. Like every time Chelsea has a problem, I always say, "Have you called your mum yet?" Because one thing Chelsea's gonna do is call her mum.
One thing I'm gonna do is call
her mum. Literally.
And do you know what it is? Because my mum is really, I think she's really interesting.
Yeah.
And I learn, the more I press on to the fact of wanting to know her and understand her as a human, we do become friends. You know, a lot of African parents will be like, I'm not your friend, I'm not your friend. But the thing is, at some point, we're going to have to be friends.
Yeah.
Because I am no longer the child that I was.
Yeah.
I am now a fully fledged adult.
Yeah.
I'm supporting myself-ish.
Yeah.
Hey, mum, can you send me £50?
It will happen.
You know, but I'm becoming my own person with my own ideas and beliefs, and I think it's important for you to then learn from your parents and understand them, like I said, as they are, not as your mother, as Miss, Juliet Mtada. Sorry to drag you onto the internet, mother. And so that, I think, is key to just having that relationship. And I will always call my mum when I'm making a decision, because she doesn't necessarily provide me with like sound advice. Because there's been times where I've called her in a panic and she's given me like the worst advice ever. And it's just, all I can do is laugh, because I guess what I'm looking for is something that feels like home, or something that feels like that she is a person who can plant my feet to the ground. And there are not a lot of people who can get you to that place in life, and a lot of people will find that from their parents. Maybe there are friends that you can find that, or maybe a partner. But in a space where, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do, or I'm so stressed, or etc., etc., if I can pick up and call my mother, and even if what she's saying I'm probably not going to do or not going to agree with, or maybe she's just chatting shit, I can still feel that sense of someone is there.
Yeah.
And she's always going to be there, and I appreciate it, the good and bad.
Shout out to Mumsy.
Shout out to
This
Mumsy.
was not supposed to be a segment, but it's great. It's International Women's Month.
Yes.
Mother's Day is coming up. So
Yes.
it's all linking. It's all linking.
It's all linking. And this is what Woman to Woman is all about.
Exactly. We're bridging the gap between womanhood, and I think motherhood is such a huge aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you want to be a mother, whether you don't have to be a physical mother. I think you experience motherhood in so many different ways because it's so tied to the nurturing aspect that we have as women. So I just think it's great to shout out the Mumsy.
Yeah. What's your relationship with motherhood? Do you want to be a mother?
Hell, turn it on me.
Turn it on you, honey.
I think I always said, I always said I feel like my role in life is to be a mum. Like,
yeah, that stayed with me when you said that to me. Yeah, you said that to me about 5 months ago.
Yeah. Do you know what? I think because my mum is them mums that she's so in love with her children that it becomes suffocating. Like, she doesn't want to let go. Like, she doesn't want to cut the cord. So the type of mother that she was, I think it translated into me and how I love and how I want to love people. So I've always said I really want to have kids so that I can nurture that love in them. And I think I'll probably do. I think being a mum is one of the greatest jobs that you have and stuff. And I have a lot of siblings. I come from a household of like seven kids, and I'm the oldest girl. So that first,
you're the oldest of 7.
I have an older brother, but he's
there,
but but to be the oldest girl in a home,
it's a different type of
okay, cool. At least so I've always had that responsibility to kind of be the second in command when my mom's not there. So I think for me motherhood is a necessity, and I think, like you said, it feels like home. And I've seen my mom. My dad's been there, but there was a period when my dad was back in Congo, and my mom had to take care of like 6 kids under the age of 5 by herself in a new country. So I've seen her juggle motherhood to a different degree. So I definitely want to be a mom, and motherhood is just amazing to me. I'm sure it'll have its headaches.
It is amazing. And I think with motherhood, for me, I get so scared.
Why?
Because it's not easy having children.
It's not
easy. Just having them in the first place, just getting pregnant in the first place. I'm not necessarily in that stage of my life yet, but I do often think, even as a young babe, I think to myself, I really may need to start thinking about putting money on the side for things like IVF. It's difficult for women to have children, especially Black women.
But no one ever talks about it. That's not a conversation that's had.
Exactly. And this is the type of discussions that we're going to be having on Woman to Woman, where we are, especially when it pertains to women of colour, there are a lot of difficulties around having children as women of colour, from just procreating to then being in the birthing rooms. And then not only that, then the support that comes after with maternity leave. Motherhood has become something that is so expected to be easy and natural. And thing is, we're not really deeping the fact that a miracle. No, you know what? I won't say miracle because even the idea of calling motherhood a miracle, of course, yes, it is, it's a gift and it's amazing and it's beautiful and all those type of positive affirmations and ideas that comes around bringing life to the world. But it also is a miracle wrapped in a nightmare.
No,
that's true. I've from what I've read and from what I've heard from friends who now have had children, it has to be the most difficult thing a human being can physically go through. And then to do it 7 times. Sis. Your mother is, wow.
She tried.
She
natural,
did it.
all natural.
Was she wearing the drugs?
Was she taking the drugs in Congo? I don't know, you know.
Oh my god.
Because I actually don't know what she was doing. So I think when you look at someone like that, you think, like, and then with motherhood, you have to juggle life still goes on. So you still have to be a wife. You still have to be, you know, a sister. You still have to, I don't know how they
And I feel like pregnant women, the fact that there aren't red carpets for every woman.
Sis. And you know what's so interesting as well? Sorry, this is such a segue to what we were supposed to talk about. But I was watching the documentary about women who have had female genital mutilation in Somalia, who are still expected to have children,
of course,
and have had that procedure, and that's not even spoken about. And some women die because of that, and the way that it's, I don't know, I just feel like there's so many nuances that comes from that is attached to Black womanhood and motherhood that needs to be explored a bit more, because there's so many untold stories in that space that we know nothing about. And I think the more unspoken it goes, the more uncomfortable it becomes for us to speak about in our communities, even though it's so important, because one woman telling our story allows for floodgates of women to be able to be like, oh my god, I'm not an anomaly. Like, there is someone that looks at me who's experienced the same thing as me, which is really, really, really important. So I think when you even started the conversation around womanhood, and you spoke about sacrifice, strength, and sex, I think those three things are so integral to womanhood, and it's not so spoken about.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
And you know, the reason why I'm so almost to a crazy point passionate about sex is
let's talk about it.
Women have been made to feel like such shit. Like such shit. You know, you would really think that like immaculate conception, like you would think that at some point in this history women weren't having sex, we were just being gifted with children by storks, like as if we haven't been fucking and bucking for centuries, for the dawn of time, in order to have children. Like, this is how we are all here, because a woman and a man, a biological woman and a biological man, had sex. That is how we are all here, and it's how we will continue being here, you know, God willing,
until they start making
I mean, you know, of course some people do need the extra help, and that's fine, but yes, that we are sexual beings, and I think it goes beyond the biology of it, but more so the actual culture of it, the way that even this, especially when it comes to the sex lives of Black women. You've mentioned FGM. That is something that happens a lot in the African continent, and it happens because basically they the reason they are doing it is to basically take away any temptation of a woman to have sex and outside, to prove that
the woman is pure
and is a virgin, and it means that basically by removing their quote unquote, you know, clitoris and sexual organs and I think parts of their labia, someone correct me, I'm sure you will, you know, it basically takes away the quote unquote need to have sex for pleasure. The issue with that is that the health risks that it causes is so beyond, like, and also just the amount of shame that is then taught over and over and over again, generation after generation. After that pain hits you and the body remembers, it will then tell your daughter that this is what you deserve for having sexual ideas, for having sexual thoughts. And the worst thing is that when a lot of these women in these countries will still be violated sexually, will still be used sexually, and they'll and I'm laughing because it shows you the absolute insanity of how women are treated when it comes to sex. And then there's the other side of, again, when talking about Black women of color, of how they are exoticized and over sexualized, especially in Western culture, and it's in a way that is what's the word I'm looking for? it's worse than pervy. It's done in such a way that is not supposed to uplift us or, you know, make us view us as sexy. No, it's just another way to objectify us, and I think it breaks my heart that this is the way of the world, and it has been for centuries. The violation of women is a tactic of war that is used to this day. You know, rape culture, sexual assault culture is something that exists in our universities, in our schools, within family. It's exhausting, and I think because of the lack of information that is fed with in all cultures, Western or not, it is why we continue these patterns of violence. And I'm sick of it. I want women to not feel ashamed by their sexuality. I want women to be able to talk quite frankly about it, and I want women and men and all people who are practicing sex to just be able to talk about it. If we are out here talking about, you know, all what's happening with Kanye West and Kim Kardashian's relationship in such detail, why can't we talk about the fact that, you know, my boyfriend has not been able to have not even my boyfriend, I haven't been able to have an orgasm for 6 months with my boyfriend. What's going on? Let's have this conversation with my partner. The fact that those conversations are still difficult to have is a big red flag to me. And of course there are worse situations going on when it comes to the sex problem, but yes, anyway, sorry on that tangent.
No, that was so great, and I think it shows the reason why I wanted to add those sort of conversation within Women's Home, because one of the reasons why it was created was to have conversations that aren't being had in such an open dialogue, even if we agree or we don't. And I think especially for me, coming from like a faith background, sex was never spoken about. So when I am introduced to that conversation, it becomes something so natural becomes uncomfortable to talk about. It's like, oh, but you're being a prude, or but then there's important conversations around, like, you know, birth control, sexual health, around even like sexual like awareness around other men or other women, like, do you know what I mean? So I feel like you even explaining and taking us to the granular of why you're so passionate about sex, relationships, black women within the sexual world is more of an indication why we need to have this conversation to the forefront, because there is such a nuance around what sex looks like for black women.
Exactly.
So yeah, thanks for sharing. It wasn't off tangent, it was perfect.
Okay, thank you.
You cutie pie. So then in the spirit of sort of like International History Months and whatever, what is like one bias or one stereotype? Sorry. International History Month, because it's so long. Yeah. The month of women. Yeah. What is kind of like a bias or a stereotype that you want to break, that you, through your work within the sex space, because you do so much. Your work, but I want to kind of focus on what we're connecting on. What do you kind of want black women to know? What do you want your work to, how do you want your work to impact in that space?
Okay, well, one of the biggest misconceptions is that people who are sex influencers or sexologists have a lot of sex.
Chelsea wants to let you know it has been dry in that department.
No, honey. Never dry. But certainly, unfortunately, that is not the case. I think actually by having the courage, so, you know, of course, before I did this, guess what I did before I decided to do sex content?
What?
Guess what I did?
What did you do? Did you become celibate?
No.
Sorry.
I talked to my mum.
I can't breathe. Oh, I should have said that.
I called my mum. And she was like, I don't know why it's taken you this long to do this. And because actually when I was 14, I talked to her. I was having a conversation with her about this project that I wanted to do. And at the time, I think it had to do with the experience of Black women and sexuality. And, we were talking about all sorts of things from, polyamory in Africa to, same-sex relationships within Black women and how that is viewed. And she got me a book by Esther Perel called The State of Affairs. And I always found it quite funny because I was only 14 at the time, but there was this little bit of encouragement from her. Like I was really nervous having this conversation with her about this project that I was wanting to do at school, but she was like, yeah, go for it. But again, as I was growing up and the shame began to kick in, you start growing a bit of boobs and the uncles start talking, and you walking down the street and the guys are looking at you a particular way and you're still a kid and you don't understand. And I still was working through a lot of the shame that I felt for being viewed as a sexual being when I was not ready. Yeah. And even when I was ready, I hated the fact that it felt like a lot of time men were kind of trying to take advantage of the fact that I was, young and big boobed and there was one point I used to cover up a lot of the time. I used to wear like bra minimizers and all these things, not because I was ashamed of my quote unquote femininity, however you want to describe that, but I got sick and tired of being viewed on face value by my quote unquote assets. So for a long time I kind of shut away that part of wanting to study more, wanting to read more. But then I 6 months ago, or maybe 4 months ago, I can't remember when it was, I was like, fuck it. Absolutely. I don't know if you're allowed to swear on this podcast, but fuck it, because I am sick and tired of being sick and tired of how we are being taught sex in this community. So that's why I decided to truly take it upon myself to start creating content that was, viewable and easy for, the Gen Z sort of type, and also, of course, millennials. And then that's how we then truly started to connect on how we could do it for woman to woman. I think whatever happens and however I decide to grow myself as a sex educator, sex influencer, I want to leave this world knowing that women are not only having better sex, but they are experiencing sex in a much healthier way from as young as being children to now being adults. Because when it comes to understanding yourself as a sexual person, it does start as a young girl, and it's something that young children should be made aware of and should be understanding of. They don't have to know everything. Of course, they don't need to know everything, but they need to understand that their body is theirs, that the consent belongs to them. Absolutely. Children can't necessarily give consent, but they do need to have an understanding that this is theirs. They can protect their body parts. And that, again, all these types of conversations are not taught. And if I can do that and hopefully make the world a safer place / funner, sexier place, then all the better. But yes, that is my end goal. Perfect. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, I think you did. Kind of. I don't know.
Not really. Not really.
But it was an answer.
You just wanted to talk, didn't you?
I just want to chat. chat. But no, it covered it well. Do I have any more questions for you, Chelsea? So you do a lot of work. I think you do a lot of work around. Well, do a lot of work with the GUAP scene. It's been a long day.
Yes, it really has.
The GUAP scene and a lot of work as a poet and stuff. What are you working on personally? Because I know you've got your balance in woman to woman and GUAP, but personally, what are you?
Personally, I'm working on my personal, I guess, platform as a sex educator, blogger, influencer, human. I want to get to the point that when you think about sex, you think about me. Woohoo! This space, honey. I'm reminding you to put the condom on, to take the pill, to get a vibrator.
Okay.
Yeah. And also to ask those questions that may make you feel a little bit uncomfortable, to be able to sex is not only about having with other people. Sex is also a solo experience, and once you can understand yourself as a sexual being, I think you can find your confidence, you can find your peace, you can find your calm. And yeah, I want to be a guide to the people who are in need of one, and help as many people as possible feel liberated about their sexuality. And also just for me to learn more. I'm always going to be a student, and I look forward to basically the next stages of just kind of connecting with people on a physical level, maybe doing talks and workshops, and just understanding more and talking more. But I'm really happy to work with Woman to Woman on this platform. And for all the listeners, please send me your dilemmas, because I will be answering them via Woman to Woman once a week. So yes, please hit me up with those.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Before you go though, I want to ask you, who are your top 3 women right now that are inspiring you?
Oh my goodness. My top 3 women, Doja Cat. I think she's so fun and silly, and obviously really talented. I love her sense of humor. So Doja Cat is number 1. Number 2 would always be, Maya Angelou is my forever number 1.
Yeah.
But even when I'm not even reading her or listening to her, or specifically, she will always be in my heart and in my spirit. I call her my fairy godmother. I never met her, obviously, but she's my spiritual grandmother, my fairy godmother. And she's one woman to have ever lived that I will forever love, in death and in life. And I know this sounds really intense, but I really love Maya Angelou.
We could tell.
And number 3, currently it's my mum. Like, she's really cool. She's kind of going through a hard time. Well, yeah, hard-ish time. I guess she's okay. She'll be fine.
You'll be fine, Mom.
She's a strong woman. But yeah, like, I'm liking our relationship. I like where it's going. And yeah, I think we're both really doing our best and giving each other a lot of grace. And I really appreciate that from her. And life is precious. You wake up, next thing you know, you lost your mother.
It's true.
And so for me, I'm very aware of how short life is and how short of a time I have with her. I never know when it's going to be our last moment. So yeah, I appreciate that, lady.
Oh, that is such a lovely way to
Whatever.
end this. I hope she watches this so that when she makes you angry, she knows. When you make her angry, she knows that, okay, Chelsea actually likes me.
When I need some money.
Yeah. When you ask her for money, just show her this video.
I'll be like, Mum, please. I need help.
Last question. If you, what would you tell your younger self? And then we'll leave it.
Oh, poor girl. I feel really sorry for my younger self.
Oh my gosh. Like, let's think 12-year-old Chelsea. What would you tell her? Bless her.
I feel so bad for her. Honestly, if I could say something to my younger self, I would say to her, be brave. I was so scared. And a lot of people don't think I'm a scared person. A lot of people, and I still carry that, a lot of people think that I'm this super courageous, super confident person. But I don't think I am. I think I'm very fearful of a lot of things. I don't think I'm as courageous as I would like to be. And I think courage is the one virtue in life that you need above everything. Yeah. Quote Maya Angelou. And
wow, Chelsea. Can't believe this.
And it's been a long day, guys.
It's been a long day.
No, it really has. I'm actually crying. But yeah, so I think I would tell my younger self, just be courageous. Like, fuck those girls, just go and wear. Because I used to wear this like this pink cheetah print 2-piece tracksuit, and I remember I went into the year 7 or whatever, and they were like, "Is that what you're wearing?" And I remember feeling like absolute dog shit, and I threw it away. And that was the first step of me just losing, chipping that level of courage and confidence.
Yeah.
And confidence is so important, especially as a young woman in this world. And yeah, I would tell 12-year-old me, fuck those girls, wear the cheetah print. If you want to start singing and dancing on the podium, do it. I would rather, honestly, for a 12-year-old kid, I'd rather a 12-year-old kid that is annoying. You know, there's annoying 12-year-old kids singing, dancing, doing up all the acting classes. I would rather that kid than a kid that has become a shell. And yeah, so I would tell my 12-year-old kid, go for it, hun. They're all losers.
And with that,
I'm looking at you.
and with that, before Chelsea starts saying names, me. Thank you so much for listening, Charles. Thank you for being such an amazing first host. First guest, sorry. I appreciate you.
There's better coming, by the way. Don't be too worried.
No, you are the standard. I appreciate you. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. We delved into a topic that I thought was very interesting. I didn't expect this, but thank you so much for watching. I will leave all of Chelsea's details in the description box somewhere, and I will see you in the next episode.
Bye guys.